Hospital administrators today, and if any of them are listening, I caution you for what I'm about to say. They're nothing more than a glorified hotel manager. They're implementing and policing the policies of the corporate office. And we've seen over time the growth of these systems with these fat corporate offices that exact more and more of a tax from each of these community hospitals. We have the same problem in these hospital systems that we do with the idea of government. People in D.C. or people in the state capitol think they know best what should be done in our communities. Well, the reason why doctors live in the communities and the hospitals that they work is because they know their neighbors, they know their community, they know what's needed.
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians to overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be. Visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com because you're not in this alone. My guest today is the director of Right On Healthcare, part of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. He's made quite a name for himself as an influencer of modern healthcare policy in the U.S. So thanks for joining me. Now let's hear David Balat tell his story. And I am really looking forward to what we call a special interest guest today. Most of the time, as our listeners know, we're speaking to physicians on Prescription for Success. But today, it's my honor to be speaking with someone who is very supportive of physicians. His name is David Balat. He's very politically active, and we're going to have an opportunity to pick his brain, to find out what's on his mind, and find out how he is trying to help the physician community. So, David, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and I thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Oh, I'm happy to do it, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I likewise, and we like to begin with the origin story on Prescription for Success. I'm wondering if in your late teens, when you were contemplating going off to college and planning a career, if anything like this was even a dream at that point, or when did the urge start to make its appearance?
Oh no, politics played no part in any equation when I was a young man. I'm a child of immigrants, so I was supposed to be a doctor, and so I in preparation for what I thought my vocation would be, I worked in hospitals from the time that I could at the age of 15 years old back then.
What sort of work?
I started in medical records back before it was electronic. They would bring me a big pile of papers, and you'd take the top sheet off, and you'd look for the proper record, and you'd have those big shelves that you'd crank on the side to move here and there, and you'd populate that record with the proper document. So that was my first job, and from there I went on to medical records, and I was just an assistant in there, and I feel like I've been through just about every department in a hospital. And when I was in college, I worked my way through school. I was pre-med, biology and chemistry, and I was working in an ER as an orderly when that was such a position. Mm-hmm. And one of the doctors I remember very clearly, Dr. Odie, called me in. He said, "David, you do such a great job around here. What do you want to do when you get out of school?" And I told him, "Well, doctor, I'm hoping to go into medicine. I'm pre-med at the moment." And he said, and this is around the time that managed care was just coming in. And he said, David, don't do it. And there was another, Dr. Chung was there next to him. And he says, he corroborated and says, yeah, this, why did you want to get into medicine in the first place? I said, I love patient care. I love what you guys do with patients. And he says, we're spending less time with patients. We're doing more paperwork. If you're interested in patient care, consider nursing, which was really shocking and disturbing to me. And so I was introduced, I think, a few months later to a hospital CEO here in the Houston area when I lived there. We talked, and he says, "What do you want to do, young man?" And I told him, and he said, "Well, what is it about medicine that appeals to you?" And I told him what I thought appealed to me, and he says, "Well, that's basically the way that my day looks as an administrator of a hospital." And that was very intriguing to me. And we talked more and more. And the more I did talk to him, he was very encouraging about his position. And I shifted gears, went on to graduate school, got my master in healthcare administration and also an MBA, and ended up working while I was in graduate school in a business office, which was one of the only departments I hadn't worked in before, just to learn the business of that type of facility. Mm-hmm. And from there, I went on to work for a number of big groups that ended up merging with each other. We've seen just merger upon merger and consolidation upon consolidation here, especially in the last 11 years during the growth of the ACA. But, it was happening back in the late 80s, early 90s as well. And what I did learn is, I at a very early age, took on a vice presidency of a $50 million organization. We had 55 physicians. We had, everything but inpatient beds. It was Diagnostic Clinic of Houston in the Texas Medical Center. Mm-hmm. And I have no idea why they hired me, doctor. As a 27-year-old man, in an organization of that size, with that kind of prestige, with that kind of budget, I don't know that I had hired me today. But I'm thankful they did, but because they provided me with an amazing education. Some of my dear mentors came from that organization, and they were the ones that really formed my thinking in the administrator that I was going to end up becoming, and really the work that I do today. I remember one of our urologists took me aside, and he said, "David, don't listen to these guys that you work with. I want you to understand one thing and one thing only. Nothing happens in a hospital except for at the tip of a doctor's pen." And when you think about that, that's actually very profound. And when you think about it, I don't know that doctors even believe that, because they've given up their power.
Well, that's a very interesting point. And I was on the verge of interrupting you for the last couple of minutes because of the profound nature of what you just told us. And that is that you thought you would make a pretty good physician, and I bet you would have, but it sounds like you were having a very hard time finding people around you who felt that it turned out that way. Have I got the wrong idea? Is that the message you were getting?
These were the physicians I was around, and it could have been where they were working. But at that point in time, when I was making the decision for myself, and I'm very thankful for how my career has gone, because I feel that I'm probably doing better for the House of Medicine doing what I'm doing now than if I were a physician. So it was meant to be, whatever happened. But it was interesting that the physicians that were friends to me, that wanted to advise me, were discouraging me from taking the steps towards becoming a doctor, becoming a physician. And they were just very unhappy with where they were and the future of their profession.
Well, I'm going to tell you that makes sense to me. Now, I began my medical training in the mid-1970s, and when I started practicing, things were much like I expected there would be, but the pace of change and the evolution into what we see today was profoundly rapid. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you were getting the message from some of the people that were seeing the same things that I saw in the early 80s and the mid 80s. And they were already beginning to be discouraged and didn't want you to suffer the same fate. So did you have the feeling, when you reached that point, when you were getting that message, did you feel like this is a great opportunity? Maybe I really can make a huge difference, and I don't have to be at the bedside to do that? And if so, has it really turned out that way?
I don't think I had the foresight at that time. I think I was looking for something that I could be good at, that I could earn a living doing. And the more I experienced what healthcare and the hospital industry had become, the more disenchanted I became with it. And I think I'm just crazy enough that I'm one of these fellows that I believe that there can be a solution. I believe that healthcare is about the doctor and the patient and the relationship that exists between those two. That is the basic building block of what healthcare is. And as long as we hold that relationship sacred and we understand that baseline building block, then we can protect it and we can do those things to enhance it as it is, rather than continuing to introduce middleman after middleman in between those two stakeholders.
Well, it seems like your goal was nothing short of noble and admirable. And unlike the physicians that steered you in that direction, do you feel like you have made substantial progress?
Well, I do. And if I may, I'd like to maybe continue with my career and share with you the progression that's led me to today.
Absolutely.
I'm
fascinated by this.
Well, I'm glad. I did become a hospital CEO. And one thing that I was very disappointed in was my colleagues in the hospitals, by and large, did not like physicians. They didn't like having to deal with them. They were intimidated by them. But the goal was to exercise power and authority over them.
I do hate to keep interrupting you.
No, it's a conversation. Please do.
You are right on the thing that I think just absolutely destroys the soul of most of the physicians that I know, and I have to admit, eventually destroyed my soul. And that is, I'm out here trying to take care of sick people. I'm out here trying to do the very best thing that can be done for my patient. And you, Mr. Hospital Administrator, are seemingly doing everything you can to make sure that I do not. Do you run into that attitude from physicians?
I do, but not as much anymore. And I'm actually quite disappointed and saddened that so many physicians have lost hope. And part of what I do now, I hope that by the end of this conversation, that people that are listening will have at least a glimmer of hope.
Yeah, and I hope we can take it there too. And I guess the next question is, and I think probably what the majority of physicians who listen to this podcast would like to hear is, why is it that if you are in the position of managing the operational side of a healthcare system, why would you be so dismissive of physicians when they tell you that it's getting harder by the day to do what they got into the profession to do? Why would they seemingly on a daily basis think up things to make your life harder?
Hospital administrators today, and if any of them are listening, I caution you for what I'm about to say. But if you have disagreement with me, feel free to reach out. They're nothing more than a glorified hotel manager. They're implementing and policing the policies of the corporate office. And we've seen over time the growth of these systems with these fat corporate offices that exact more and more of a tax from each of these community hospitals. We have the same problem in these hospital systems that we do with the idea of government. People in D.C. or people in the state capitol think they know best what should be done in our communities. Well, the reason why doctors live in the communities and the hospitals that they work is because they know their neighbors. They know their community. They know what's needed. They can address the needs of the folks that they see at the grocery store or at church. But there's the corporatization, the commoditization of healthcare and really of medicine has been something to make the practice of medicine not even really the practice of medicine anymore. They want to make it more algorithmic. That's why they see it's perfectly okay to put advanced practice nurses or PAs on the same level as physicians. You all are now providers. There's no physician. They're whitewashing all of it and assigning new words with new meanings. And who is it that's gaining all the the financial reward? Well, it's the administrators. It's the folks that are leading these so-called nonprofit, but I prefer to call them tax exempt, because there's nothing that is really of community benefit to their communities.
Yeah, that's been a very fascinating point for me. If I had looked at the long view many years before, I would have thought that the nonprofits, the 501c3s, the faith-based healthcare organizations, and people that were established, or at least hospital organizations that were established with the express purpose of making sure that everybody got good health care, you would think that they would be the place where a physician could practice and feel like they were finding really supportive people around. And the truth is, you really can't tell them, you can't differentiate them from the big corporations, the HCAs, and it wasn't my intention to call names, but the big health care organizations, the hospital corporations that are clearly so totally in charge. It's hard to tell when you're involved in one of those hospitals which type of organization that you work for. Do you think I've just
this without
been
question.
messing with the wrong people? Am I misreading that impression?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, and we're doing some research right now. I work with the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and we're a research-based organization. That's one of my jobs. The other is I founded an organization called Free to Care that advocates for both physicians and patients. But no, you're exactly right. The research that we're doing now is showing that for-profit, publicly traded hospitals provide more in the way of charity care than these nonprofits, these religiously based hospitals. Many of the nonprofits, or again, the tax exempts as I prefer, they are sending their patients to court. They're suing them. They're sending them to collections. They're putting liens against their home. Mm-hmm. They're doing a lot of terrible things, and that's why we continue to see so many people that are declaring bankruptcy due to medical bills.
And I think that if we could have a representative of those groups here, and I wish we could, but I think that they would simply object that they didn't really have any choice because of the financial demands that are placed on hospital operations. Do you think there is any merit in that argument at all?
How free am I to cuss?
We're not ready. In my early days, I worked in a broadcast radio station, and we were under the rules of the FCC, and you couldn't color outside the lines. But we have no such restrictions.
Well, I'll try to keep it as mild as I can. That is complete and utter bullshit.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Many of these large systems that are doing the things that I described earlier, they have billions. That's B with a B. They have billions of dollars in offshore accounts, in their foundations, in their operating accounts, in their for-profit arms of their insurance companies. Or now we're seeing some of them even starting travel agency or travel nurse agencies. That's not an argument that's going to fly, and I'd be happy to take on that debate with any of them. Now that is different for some of the rural hospitals and some of the community hospitals, and mm-hmm. Those are near and dear to my heart, because as I left the big box hospitals, that's where I went. I became a turnaround specialist, and mm-hmm. hospitals that were on the brink of financial failure or were deeply in distress, facing a bankruptcy, they would hire me to come in and get them on their feet, so to speak.
And how'd you do that?
It was you're going to laugh, Doc. You know what I did? The one thing I did that the group before me didn't do is I worked with the doctors. If you keep the facility clean and you hire a good anesthesia group, which is important to your surgeons and to your patients, if you go out and You turn your rooms over quickly so that a surgeon can do more procedures in a day. If you give them times that they want to work, suddenly you've got all these guys that want to come use your OR.
Imagine that.
So, I say that to folks and they say, well, it couldn't have been that easy. You had to go in and chop people or fire folks. And I really didn't do a lot of that. I really didn't. There's a normal amount of attrition when a new CEO comes into the C-suite. But I would focus on developing relationships with physicians. I never wanted to employ them, never wanted to try to control or grab them by the collar. That's just not how I was trained. It's not the kind of person that I am. And I think you get better results if you partner with them.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians, for physicians, to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests. Whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics, Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. I find that that's a very unusual attitude amongst hospital administrators in the 21st century. And,
unfortunately so.
I'm glad to know that it actually can work if you just put it into practice. But I think it's just something that that we see less and less. I'd like to know a little bit more about right-on healthcare. Just
Sure.
What does that mean? Is that doing the job correctly? Is that being in the right wing of the political parties? What's the meaning of right-on healthcare?
Well, it's I didn't choose the name. it was given to me, but I prefer the first interpretation that you had, which was we're correct in the way that we view healthcare. I do work for a conservative think tank, but I believe that healthcare is personal. It's not partisan, nor should it be. It's been weaponized. It's become a political football, and that's to the detriment of everybody. So what we do here is we, as I mentioned this earlier, is the mission is to amplify the voice of doctor and patient, to hold sacred that relationship, because again, that is healthcare. So we work on policies that free up physicians, that free up patients, and that mitigate the existence of third parties that don't belong in between those two stakeholders.
And there are a lot of those, aren't there?
Oh goodness, I could be employed for several lifetimes.
Would you mind, you don't necessarily have to name names, but I would like you to go through the list of categories of the people that make it hard.
The federal government, insurance companies, pharmacy benefit managers, hospitals, state governments, organizations that claim to be healthcare experts, but have never worked a day in a hospital or ever held a patient's hand.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just a few.
So I think we're in the territory that kind of fascinates me the most, David, and it gets really difficult to even talk about politics in 2021. But, if there was going to be anything that politicians ought to be able to agree on, I would think that healthcare is it. And yet it never seems to happen. I'm interested to know if you have any insight on that at all.
Yeah.
And after I hear from you, I might offer some ideas of my own.
Well,
so we'll see how this goes.
You've actually asked that question just a few moments ago, but it was regarding administrators.
Uh-huh.
So let's look at the trend. The reason why there's not a disagreement is because it's designed to pit people against each other. That pitting of parties against each other ultimately results in more power for the federal government. And that's what hospital administrators want. That's what governments want. That's what organizations want. They want to be the ones that are referred to as the fix or the solution for healthcare. Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting, Dr. Cook, that when you hear politicians talk about healthcare, when they say, well, you're going to lose your healthcare, or we're going to give you healthcare, has it ever occurred to you that they're not really even talking about healthcare? They're talking about health insurance. Why is it in today's
Precisely.
Why is it today that we have conflated health insurance with healthcare?
Well, you're right into the territory that makes me most suspicious, David, and that is my impression of politicians is they never really speak their own thoughts. They speak the thoughts of their biggest contributors. And pharmaceutical companies, instrument makers, hospital corporations, lawyers, the list goes on and on of people who have loads of money to put into their particular cause. But the difficult part for me is, why is it that the people can't stand up and say, we don't like either of you guys. Both of you are doing it wrong. Nobody is giving us what we need. How are we missing out on that?
They're not playing their part. People are so hopeless, like we talked about earlier, not just physicians, but patients as well. We've been so conditioned to just take what we're given. And that has got to stop. That really has to stop. If you want to have hope, and you say you want to have hope, then you've got to be a part of the solution. There's just no other way around it. Some people would give the advice, well, be involved in the political process and get to know who your politician is. I don't think that's enough. My advice is have them know who you are. And many of those politicians actually aren't opposed to that. If you come to them with solutions and not just the problems, and you say, look, whether I'm an individual and this is what I'm experiencing and I'm in your district, or I'm a part of this big national group like Free to Care that I run, here are the materials that we have, and this is what we see as being part of the problem. But here are our solutions. Here are some ideas that we think that you can really be successful running on, and I want to support you doing it. That goes a much longer way. And yes, the pharmaceutical groups and the attorneys and all these other special interest groups, they have a lot of money, but what is that money used for? It's used to campaign and get votes, right? Well, we're the voters. So we need to stand up, be informed, take part, get involved, and take back what is important to us, or what we say is important to us, which is that relationship between the doctor and patient.
So tell us some things that Right on Healthcare would like the general population to get excited about.
Oh, goodness. Well, as far as the work in the think tank, we have been at the forefront of creating other forms of coverage. And, insurance is not the end-all, be-all. There are other forms of coverage where people can find ways that they can protect themselves at an affordable rate. We are working on the backs of the advocacy group Free to Care in promoting the transparency of pricing in hospitals, which we're still getting quite the fight back from them.
Boy, so that'd be a big help, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it? Yeah, I absolutely think that. And I think the next step, and many doctors already do this, is, put your cash rates out there. Put your cash prices out there and let patients know. and be the leaders in this. But we absolutely want the hospitals to show us their prices, and they're still woefully non-compliant. But we've been at the forefront of that, on the free to care side, which that group alone, we've grown to 32 member organizations. We're a C4, which means we get to be involved in the political process, and we have a seat at the table. But in those organizations, that represents a little over 8 million people nationally and over 70,000 physicians. We're just over half the membership of the AMA, and we're continuing to grow, and we're going to continue to be the voice of the physician, the appropriate voice of the physician, because the AMA sure ain't doing it.
Yeah, that's been a complaint of mine for literally half century. I was introduced to the AMA during my first week in practice, I think. And as you can imagine, the only thing that they really showed any interest in, from my perspective, was that they wanted to make sure that I financially supported the AMA PAC and my County Medical Society PAC and probably a couple of others as well. And that was about it. I haven't really seen any substantial change in the AMA over that half century. No. Have you?
No.
I know you haven't been watching a half century, but you get the idea.
Well, I've been able to look back and see what they've done, and they make their money on developing the CPTs. So there's that, and there's also CME, the education. So that's where they make their money. It's not from the membership. So if you look at what's important to the AMA, they are a mouthpiece of the federal government. They supported universal health care. They're talking about the environment. They're talking about gun policy, and they're talking about everything other than what's important to physicians right now. And they're really not using their resources to protect the practice of medicine.
Yeah. You mentioned universal health care. Is that necessarily a terrible thing? Is it something that we would never, ever be able to live with?
Well, I think it's important that we look to see what other countries' experiences are. And you look at the NHS, and you look at Canada, and you look at Costa Rica, and you look at some of these other countries. Now, are there some positive aspects to it? Sure. Are there largely negative experiences and perceptions by those that live in those countries? Absolutely. If you're looking at what's going on in the NHS, there's such a shortage of primary care physicians that they've even considered having in the primary care office group visits of 15 people. They have implemented rationing. So if you have cataracts, you get your first cataract taken care of, and if you can see pretty well, they're not going to authorize the second. If you're over a certain age, and I can't recall what that age is, you're probably not going to get a hip replacement. So, does that really work for people? It might work for the government, and they say a lot of great things about what they're doing for their nation. But when you look at the individuals, what do they end up doing? Many of them, if they have the means, they come to the U.S. When Mick Jagger had heart condition, he wasn't going to stay in Britain or the UK. He was going to come here. I can't tell you the number of Canadians that come to the U.S. for surgery. Same for Costa Rica. I've been down there, and they have complete universal care. And I was working with when I was there, I was working with a missionary, and his wife came home one day in tears, and she had a real bad, aggressive cancer diagnosis. And they said, we need to get an ultrasound done prior to scheduling the surgery. And that was why she was crying. The ultrasound was scheduled for 12 months out. So you have access. Access is there. You just may not live long enough to get to it.
Well, we hear a lot of those kind of stories when the discussion of universal health care comes up. But on the other hand, I know of at least one nation that seems to do very well with it, and that's Germany. I actually have some close friends who feel like, they just don't have any complaints about it at all. Is that because they're doing something differently than the Canadians?
Yeah. They're not really a universal system. They're more of an employer-based system. So the employer will cover a part of the expense. They're the only other country other than the U.S. that has some connection to the employer when it comes to the insurance policies. So I wouldn't consider them to be a universal or government-run healthcare system. The one I would say the two that people usually talk about pretty consistently as a good model are Singapore and Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Singapore is actually, they do require some skin in the game. So they have universal HSAs, the health savings accounts. But more importantly, when you look at those nations, you have a relatively small geography. You've got most of the population in surrounding some metropolitan areas. You've got a lot of uniformity in ethnicities amongst the folks in those countries.
True.
So would that necessarily mean that system would work in a country like the United States, where we have such diverse geography, where we have such diverse ethnicity, where we have such diverse, everything? It may not be appropriate to say that it works there, so it's going to work here, although those countries would fit inside the state of Texas.
Well, we're sort of wandering into the what if territory, and there's probably not much to be gained from that. And I want to get back and give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about how Right on Healthcare can help us.
With Right on Healthcare, that's, again, the work of what I do in the foundation. And I work with the legislators here in the state of Texas. But that doesn't limit me from working at the federal level as well. I did work with the prior administration. We've done a little bit of work in this one. It's much more diminished because they're of a single mind. They want to expand Medicaid. They want to expand the ACA. So there's not a lot of creativity in terms of what other options there might be. So which is unfortunate because, again, we have such diversity.
Are you talking about all of government or one party in particular?
I'm talking about the current administration.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So it's just a little bit more of a challenge. But yeah, here's the thing with all politicians, regardless of party. They don't know much about healthcare. They may say that they do. They'll latch on to certain talking points. But when you get into the weeds with them, their eyes will start to glaze over. And that's why I say that especially the listeners of this program, regardless of what party you're in, and I would say it shouldn't matter what party you're in. Talk to all of them. Go to Democrats, go to Republicans, go to independents. Tell them your stories. One of the most important things you can do, and this is part and parcel of what we do with Right on Healthcare and Free to Care, is we are learning to become storytellers because you have a lot of them. You have a lot of stories. Every patient you see is a story. Share those. Share the plight that you go through. I know how much time you spend on the phone with insurance companies who aren't authorizing a medication you know is going to be effective for your patient. Talk to them about that. Talk to them about the additional administrative burden there is with prior authorization. Talk to them about the challenges with there's only one game in town when it comes to a hospital, and they're exercising their leverage in such a way that they're bullying you. Talk to them about that. These are things that the government should be involved in. This anti-competitive behavior is something that they should be involved in.
Absolutely. Are the hands of the politicians tied because of the dependence on money from big business, which unfortunately was unleashed when the healthcare finance reform was deemed unconstitutional? But is the money just too big to fight?
No, I can't and I won't believe that. Is it an obstacle, and is it a big obstacle? Absolutely. I've been in a politician's office, and I'm not going to tell you who it is or even his role, but I just told you it was a man, though. He said, "David, what are we going to do about drug prices?" And I said, "Well, I've told you what some of the solutions are, and I won't go into the long list of things that I offered him." And he hemmed and he hawed and he looked up and he looked down and he looked back at me and he said, "David, campaigns are expensive." That is an issue. And that's
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, and they are, and they get more and more expensive. But I tell you what why are they expensive? It's so they can get ads. It's so they can get flyers. It's so they can send out emails and text messages to who? To you. And if they're not hearing from you, they're relying on those older methods.
Do you think voters have reached a point where they are much more inclined to vote along party lines as opposed to voting for their own self-interest?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Me too.
Unfortunately, because it's easier. It's a path of least resistance. People don't want to take the time to know what the issues are, to know who the candidates are and where they stand on those issues, especially the ones that are important to you. So yeah, but it's part of our job to educate those people.
I got to hand it to the politicians. They have perfected the art of inflammatory rhetoric and fear-mongering, and that's just a terrible, terrible thing.
I don't know if I told you this, but, I ran for office. I got so frustrated.
I was going to bring that up, and I really do want to hear about that if you'd like to share the story.
Yeah, no, it was a good segue. I was so frustrated. I got to the point where I just wasn't able to do as much to really affect change. And I was approached to run for office. I ended up running for U.S. Congress in Houston. I ended up losing in the primary, thankfully, to Dan Crenshaw.
You say thankfully. Why were you thankful to lose?
Well, because the path that I would then go on has allowed me to be more influential and more effective than if I had been a single member of Congress. In addition to that, I really don't see myself as a celebrity type. And that's what members of Congress are nowadays. Mm-hmm. They're celebrities. And that's how they stay relevant. That's how they raise money. You're gauged by the Republican and Democratic caucuses by how much money you can make. The amount of money that you can raise for yourself and for other members of Congress determines what committees you get on. So if you can raise a whole boatload of money, you can get on an A committee like Ways and Means or Energy and Commerce. So it doesn't have a lot to do with your knowledge and your ability to command a certain subject matter. It's all financially based.
That's a little disturbing.
It's a lot disturbing, and it should be. But I'm thankful because I advise at the federal level. I have about a little over. I think I'd have to make a list. I think about a dozen House representatives and 3-4 senators, and then in the state of Texas, about that many or more. So having the ear of those folks is allowed me to be able to spread the message that I have on a wider scale than had I just been a lone voice. That sounds like a pretty good start. I want to ask you sort of a theoretical question. Sure.
If you can name 3 very important issues that you would like for that small cadre of congressional representatives to get behind and cultivate some cross-party support, what would those 3 things be? It would probably be categories that include lists of things that we can do. So increasing or bringing back primary care, placing more of an importance on primary care is number 1. Promoting competition is number 2. And although transparency would fall under competition, I've put it out there as a 3rd category because we can get deeper into the weeds. So having transparency, not just for pricing, but for relationships, for whether there's a conflict here or there. Yeah, that transparency thing is just absolutely crucial for me. I mean, even when I was actively practicing on a day-to-day, it became so difficult for me to know what costs my own patients were going to face when they were in the hospital. And then after I retired and had to undergo some fairly complicated eye surgery, the number of gotchas on that bill, you would think that a medical professional with 44 years of experience would have an idea of what was coming, and that was not the case. Well, David, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I could keep you on for hours. It's really helpful to people like myself who have only seen healthcare from the provider side to have these conversations with someone who has a much broader view. And I really appreciate you being here to share what you've learned with us and your forecast for the future. Well, I have a question for you, Doctor. All right, let's hear it. Do you have a little bit more hope? I just don't right now, David. I'll tell you, the acrimony around American politics at this stage has got me more discouraged than I have ever been. I grew up in a world where Republicans and Democrats argued on the floor of the two houses of our government day in and day out. They were very passionate about what they believed, and they spoke up for what they believed in. But at the end of the day, they voted, and they agreed that we had a deal and that we were going to go forward. And the time would come when we would want to change those things. And, I'm living in a world now where that just simply never happens. The idea of reaching across the aisle and trying to see things through another person's eyes seems to have disappeared from American politics. And I'm just very discouraged. I don't like feeling that way, but that simply is the reality that I see every day. We don't open newspapers anymore, but, if I look at my Twitter feed or the kind of nonsense that we deal with, that's what I see. So it's very difficult for me to be optimistic at all. And I'm dying for you to give me some reason to be hopeful.
Do you remember when I told you that politicians today function as celebrities?
I do.
I can tell you that what they say in public is very different from what they say in private.
I'm sure.
And so that being the case, that's why it's important for more people like you and for your listeners and, people who are very well educated and have experience and stories, as I mentioned, to go and use you as resources to say, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Insurance Executive, but let me tell you what this person in my district said. And that carries a lot of weight with them. Being, again, whether it's you on your own, a small group of you, or your Rotary Club, or organizations like the one that I lead, persevere, persist, because the only hope that will be evident to us is the one that we create. And if we give up on it, then perhaps hope truly is lost. But I'm not ready to give up.
Well, I certainly hope that it is not. And I can tell you that what you're talking about is precisely what we at MD Coaches are trying to do. And that is we're trying to help physicians who really want to be part of the conversation and try to equip them with the knowledge and the understanding and the language to be able to get their point across, because I think they've been marginalized.
Oh, yeah.
They are looked upon more as overhead than they are as important members of the healthcare team. And I certainly want to see that changed. But in medical school and in residency and in fellowship training, that's not the kind of training that we get.
Right.
So our hope is that we can be a part of equipping physicians to demand a place at the table and know how to state their case in a way that will be persuasive.
Well, I'm thankful for your group and wish you all the success.
Well, that's very kind of you, and I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to give you my little sermonette there. But I would like to get the focus back on you, and this is the point in the program where I'm actually going to close my mic and get out of the way. And David Balat of Right On Healthcare is going to give us his personal prescriptions for success.
I didn't have to think too long about this. If I were to go back and give myself a prescription for what I would recommend, it would be these things. Remember that the main thing is the main thing. There's a lot of distraction. There's a lot of things that people will try to get you caught up in that just aren't important. And that's why it's important to be mission-based and to understand what the first principles are. And we talked about what healthcare is. What is the basic building block? Again, it's the doctor-patient relationship. So long as you hold that at the center, everything falls into place. But if you get caught up in this and that, it's easy to lose focus. So I would say the first of my prescriptions is the main thing is the main thing. The second is be brave. We've come into a world now where people are cautious of saying what they think and are worried about how they will look to other people. And I understand that. I get that. But at the same time, I think that in this world, people still admire those individuals who are brave enough to be themselves. Not in such a manner that you are rolling over people, but you're willing to share what you believe and explain why you believe it. I feel and fear that those individuals are few and far between. And the third one that I would absolutely go back and tell myself is document, document, document. We've all heard that in healthcare, right? If it's not written down, it didn't happen. And this may be this may be an odd one for the show. I don't know if you've ever had this one as a prescription, but journaling has become an important part of my life, both personally and professionally. And I can confidently say that it's been a game changer. The amount of things that we do in a given day is just, it baffles the mind. We do so much, but if we take time to reflect and we record what we've done and our thought process as to why we did it, having that on record really has been helpful for me. And I sure do wish I had done it as a younger man, as a younger executive. I think I would be I would have been much more emotionally intelligent as a young administrator. I think I would have been able to share my successes in a much more succinct manner because it's all right there. Those are my prescriptions for success, and I hope that's helpful to somebody.
Well, David, I bet it will be, and I'm really grateful that you took the time to join us today and share your prescriptions with us. Not only your prescriptions, but the little capsulized story of your career. It's been fascinating, and I've enjoyed the conversation. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to let our audience know where they can find you. I'm sure you have websites or seminars or books that you'd like to publish. So please, this is your opportunity to tell us where you can be found.
I appreciate that. Dr. Cook, it's been a real pleasure talking with you. I've enjoyed it as well. So thank you for your time and just the thoughtful questions. I'm actually starting to write a book, so I don't have anything available, probably not for a year or so. But you can go to texaspolicy.com and just about everything I've ever written is there. If you go to the issues button, you can actually search by my name. That's texaspolicy.com. You can find me on Twitter, David Balat, HC for healthcare. Also, you can find us on Facebook. There's a private group called Right on Healthcare. If you ask to join, we'll let you in. And then I mentioned several times our advocacy organization, Free to Care, care.org. Take a look at the website there. We are a completely nonpartisan group. We have liberal Democrats, conservative Republicans, and everybody in between. And we say and talk about healthcare because in such a way that it is personal. It's about the patient. And I would encourage you to go there. There's lots to read. There's lots to look at. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on any of those platforms I just mentioned.
David Balat, Director of Right on Healthcare, part of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Mm-hmm. It's been fascinating talking to you, and I really appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for listening today. Remember, you can get more information about our guests, as well as hear them face my rapid-fire questions at our Patreon site. And while you're there, you can also subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, and hopefully offer suggestions on what you'd like to hear in future episodes. Thanks very much to Ryan Jones, who composed and performs our theme music for us. That's all we have for now, so please be sure and fill your prescription for success with my next episode.